Radyo Katipunan, down from the hill and down to the world. Radyo Katipunan, the voice of the Blue Eagle. Radyo Katipunan is now online. See our live feed on facebook.com/Radyo Katipunan. Check out our Instagram and our Twitter at Radyo Katipunan and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Radyo Katipunan FM for more exclusive content.
Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ear.
Do you long for a good spiritual read? Or for literature that not only feeds the mind, but nourishes the soul as well? Do you want to be inspired, feel positive and hopeful about life? Then read The Windhover, the official magazine of the Jesuits in the Philippines. Written by Jesuits and their lay partners, The Windhover features real stories about the Jesuits and their various ministries. Be inspired. Be blessed. Subscribe to The Windhover. For inquiries, call the Philippine Jesuit Aid Association at telephone numbers 426-6001, locals 4890 or 4892. Once again, Philippine Jesuit Aid Association, telephone numbers 426-6001, locals 4890 or 4892.
And there was another drive-by shooting.
The fire we reported at the fire hall is still burning out.
Do you sometimes feel confused or lost in the complications and complexities of life? Do you feel drained, listless, or exhausted from the daily burdens and responsibilities? Why not seek our campus ministers on air every Tuesday from 2 to 3 in the afternoon? Listen to our counselors from the Loyola School's Campus Ministry Office as they ground our lives in our faith, in our school's spiritual tradition. Campus Ministers on Air. Be guided, be inspired, be blessed. Listen to our Campus Ministers on Air. We are now on YouTube. Watch all of our live episodes plus exclusive content in our channel at Radyo Katipunan FM. Don't forget to click subscribe and hit the bell to get the latest updates. Radyo Katipunan 87.9 FM.
Feeling blue? Ever thought of looking into the bright side of things? Let us help you out. Join our light, engaging, and inspiring conversations with our Chaplains on Air. Hosted by Father Junji Bargayo and Father Henry Ponce of the Society of Jesus. Chaplains on Air. The chaplains are now in. Here on Chaplains on Air. Thursdays at 6 p.m. only on Radyo Katipunan 87.9 FM.
Jesuit Music Ministry, music that uplifts the soul. Follow jescom.ph on Spotify and Jescom Music on YouTube. We are also on iTunes and Deezer.
The Jesuit Hour.
Wait, what? No! Let's try that again. Join the fun bunch of the Hugot Hour with Father J-Boy as we talk about anything and everything under the sun. Share your everyday hugot moments and everyday hugot quotes. G, tara na! Usap tayo. Bring your own baon. Bring your own hugot. The Hugot Hour with Father J-Boy and friends gathers every Monday at 6:30 to 8 in the evening. Only here on Radyo Katipunan 87.9 FM.
Radyo Katipunan 87.9 FM. Radyo Katipunan. News, insights, inspiration. Radyo Katipunan. Down from the hill and down to the world. Radyo Katipunan. The voice of the Blue
Baka naman pwede.
Baka naman pwede?
Baka naman pwede.
Mga isyung napapanahon, ating pag-usapan.
Baka naman pwede.
Gamit ang mga pananaw mula sa iba't ibang kalinangan.
Baka naman pwede.
Mula sa Institute of Philippine Culture, kami inyong samahan, tayo'y maghuntahan. Dito lang sa Baka Naman Pwede. Tuwing Huwebes, alas 3 ng hapon, dito lang sa Radyo Katipunan, 87.9 FM.
Jescom Music Ministry. Music that uplifts the soul. Follow jescom.ph on Spotify and Jescom Music on YouTube. We are also on iTunes and Deezer.
Follow at Radyo Katipunan in our social media accounts on Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter. Rejoice, refresh, renew, and reflect. Join us for an hour of music that uplifts the soul. Listen to your favorite Jesuit music ministry artists. This is JMM Radio. JMM Radio. Get your day's dose of inspirational music. Tune in to JMM Radio every Wednesday from 1 to 2 p.m. Only here on Radyo Katipunan 87.9 FM.
Pagbati po mga Katipuneros. This is Cardinal Chito Tagle. Join me every week on the Word Exposed on Air, here on the voice of the Blue Eagle, Radio Katipunan 87.9 FM, the Ateneo Campus Radio.
The voice of the Blue Eagle, Radyo Katipunan 87.9. Radyo Katipunan. News, insights, inspiration. Radyo Katipunan. Down from the hill and down to the world. Radyo Katipunan. The voice of the Blue Eagle.
Radyo, 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 Katipunan.
Of the Blue Eagle, kami di mapipigil sa pagbabalitang tumpaan tama. Buhay atenista sa loob sa labas ng eskwela, ating ibibida lahat ng eskwela. Radyo, radyo, Katipunan. Radyo, 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 Katipunan. Radyo, radyo, Katipunan. Radyo, Katipunan. Kawal ni Ignacio, Katipunero sugod, todo sa kayod, tulong at tulong. Lipad na Blue Eagle, galing hiding at tigil. Blue and white, one big fight. Radyo, 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 Katipunan. Radyo, 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 Katipunan. Radyo, radyo, Katipunan. Radyo, Katipunan. Radyo, radyo, Katipunan.
Meron? Ano nga ba ang meron? Paano nga bang mabuhay ng tapat sa meron? Don't you wish you can relive your philo classes? The terror teachers? The terrible oral exams? Or the even terrifying but liberating and life-changing aha moments? Lundagin mo, Beybeh! Here's your chance! Lundagin mo, Beybeh! Kasama ang mga pilosopong sina Jovi Miroy at Ron Capinding. Lundagin mo, Beybeh! Leaping upward, leaping forward. Lundagin mo, Beybeh! Leaping to greater heights, to greater wisdom, to greater magis. Lundag na, Ateneo!
Good afternoon to everyone. It's Monday, Lunes ulit. So nandito po ako, kaya lang wala si Sir Ron. Kasi siya po ay kasal. So Sir Ron, kung saan ka man naroon, we miss you. We miss you. So, pero ngayon, meron tayong isang napaka mahalagang panauhin at napaka mahalagang pag-uusapan natin. So talagang hindi na mapipigilan. Ito na po ang talagang nangyari sa ating halalan. Ang tanong ay may magbabago ba? Alright? So ito'y bagong gobyerno pero siguro na isang tanong 'yon, no, na bago ba talaga o ito ba ay pagpapatuloy lang? At may kailangan bang magbago sa buhay natin dahil nagbago ang liderato? Hindi lang naman natin pinag-uusapan yung Pangulo, no, at saka yung Vice Presidente. Marami din namang bago sa liderato, no, sa Senado, sa mga mayor. Ewan ko kung may mga bagong mayor ngayon. The thing is, ang tanong ay may bago kaya, no? May bago ba sa buhay natin at meron bang dapat magbago at paano maari magkaroon ng pagbabago? Kaya inisip ko na wala nang ibang maari pang magpaliwanag niyan kung hindi si Quintin Pastrana. No? Ewan ko kung kilala nyo si Quintin. Si Quintin Pastrana ay siyempre siya ay nakita natin dati sa ANC. Siya ay Quintin, anong batch ka sa college?
Sa batch 1994, AB Political Science, Dr. Miroy.
Pol-Sci, I didn't know you were Pol-Sci. All right, I thought you were from the School of Management. But he's now the president of We Energy Power Pilipinas and the founder of the Library Renewal Partnership. So to help us understand how things may change and should change and may not change in the next 6 years is Quintin Pastrana. Hi, Quintin.
Hi, Dr. Miroy. At sa mga takapagpipig natin ngayon, all around the world, maraming salamat po. Magandang hapon, magandang gabi, magandang umaga po.
All right. So Quintin, we miss you at ANC. So are you out of ANC or is it because ANC is out?
No. Actually, I'm still on contract. You see, the programs are still running. On the Money is still running, and we're just waiting for the new season. So parang sa administration may pivot nga and may pagbabagong what do you call this, pangangalakad. So we're just waiting for the new season for our shows. But in the meantime, we're still on air, and we have a very strong subscriber base naman po, especially since ANC is going digital. So maganda na rin yung ginawa ng ABS-CBN na nag-migrate sila sa digital. So we're going to have an even wider audience because of that. But in the meantime, you know, my career has always been in the energy sector. So I'm in the renewable energy sector, and on the side, ay tumutulong ako na nagpapatayo ng mga libraries, mga silid-aklatan sa buong bansa.
Right. So I'm one of your fans, and this is such an honor for us to guest you on our radio show. So the show is On the Money, but we're going to talk about money today. Let's see. Now, so Quintin, how are you feeling after the results are out of the election?
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Miroy. Yung sa akin naman talaga is, you know, I really want to thank the Jesuit education, because the Jesuit education has taught us how to remain resilient in light of yung mga pangyayari na hindi natin ninanais. Like for example, you know, many of us voted for different candidates, but at the same time, the mandate is strong. So yung degree of acceptance and resilience niya, yun ang nangyayari sa mga ibang tao ngayon. The people are now waking up to the new reality na you have a new president, second time around na naman for the Marcoses. In fairness, I mean, that was a strong mandate. So there's a strong signal na people are willing to give that the family a chance. And so now that the elections are over, the important thing is to wake up to the reality and work with the reality, diba? Yun yung tinuro sa atin ng Ateneo na is to work with what you have, and to also, you know, to mix Viktor Frankl and Marcus Aurelius. You have to be stoic and at the end of the day, it has to be, you have to practice logotherapy, wherein if people find that the result is not to their liking, they have to work with it, and we have to work constructively. And look at the bright side also, because as we'll talk about later, yung continuity na sinabi niyo sa title ng programa niyo is what should continue, anong kailangan ituloy. And nakikita naman natin sa pag-appoint ng mga ilang miyembro ng gabinete, especially sa economic cluster, these are tried and tested technocrats. Ika nga, na it's good to see that you have good technocrats there who have served different administrations. Na
before you go deeper into that, I'd like the audience to know that you actually worked in government. You served in the office of Senator Rocco, right?
Yes, that was my first job after college is with Senator Rocco, and then after that I worked with the National Security Council under FVR, and then after that with Majority Leader Manuel Rojas, Bar Rojas at that time, doing mostly economic legislation naman. So yun yung government career ko in a nutshell bago ko po lumipat sa privado, in this case the energy sector. Yeah.
And you have the intention of going back to the public sector. You actually made that shift already to the private sector.
Yeah, it's a good question. And this parang utang na loob ko to sa boss ko dati, si Senator Rocco. And then before he passed, bago siya pumanaw, I was asking for advice. Should I get into politics or should I, serve in other ways? Sabi nga niya is, there are so many politicians na out there. Your role can be, especially if you get a good education, is to be a technocrat. Ibig sabihin na pwede kang maglingkod sa gobyerno as either a citizen na either nagpapatakbo ng isang kumpanya or, humuhubog sa isang industriya like in the energy sector, or you go into politics na medyo madami mong competition. Kung wala ka masyadong pera, mahirap ng manilbi na walang utang na loob sa iba. So in my case, I chose the latter and I took his advice. So I am trying to be what they call a technocrat, which is you want to be a subject matter expert in one field. You spend your whole career being good at it so that you can help the sector, which in turn will help the government. Kasi alam mo naman, yung sa privado naman, this is a very liberalized economy. So lahat ng nangyayari dito sa polisiya, sa pangalakal, sa ekonomiya, ay galing talaga sa privado. Private sector is now, is a major contributor sa growth and prospects ng Pilipinas as opposed to other countries like China or other state-controlled countries, no? So yung sa akin is by working in the private sector, ay sa tingin ko ay mas mahalaga ang contribution ko sa estado or sa gobyerno mismo. We're taxpayers. We also shape policy so that mas maraming investment ay pumasok sa Pilipinas, including ours.
Right. So since I'm actually a playwright, so parang what I'm hearing is that you're a pol-sci major. You didn't want to go to law, but you went to like a pol-sci major would have actually went to the public
Yes.
sector, and then there was a shift. You went to private the private sector because you're saying much of the economy anyway is decided by the private sector, by private companies and individuals. Is that
Yes. Yes, I mean, and I saw that in my time during yung mga taon na nasa gobyerno ko. You could tell that there was a transition na from a post Marcos administration in 1986, parang dumilipat na talaga yung takbo ng ekonomiya to the private sector. So that was a shift. And we saw that shift, yung pagpasok ng Pilipinas sa World Trade Order, or World Trade Organization, yung mga pagpa-privatize ng mga state-owned entities. Nakikita talaga natin that the market in most Western and developed countries na yun na talaga yung nangingibabaw. Is the private sector is now better at running the economy. The government, as a book said before, as a Harvard Kennedy School book came out with, is the government will only steer, but the private sector will row. Diba? So yung talagang magtatrabaho, the one doing the heavy lifting will be the private sector. Pero yung polisiya na yan ay galing pa rin sa yung anyo ng policies, galing pa rin sa gobyerno yun. And that's where that relationship between what is good for the market, na mas kabisado ng private sector, and what is good for the people, which is the broader inclusion na nagaling sa gobyerno, yung interaction na yun yung mahalaga ngayon na humuhubog sa landas ng Pilipinas.
So the interaction between the government and probably the bureaucracy and the private sector. But matagal ko nang naririnig yung konsepto ng technocracy. And it's always been colored by all kinds of understandings. Yeah. Could you outline that for us? What is technocracy, or is that really a thing? But the technocrat is somebody, you said, who's an expert in a certain question or a certain wicked problem and keeps at it. And then ideally, government should be run by technocrats rather than anything else.
Yeah, the more technocrats, the better, diba? So so just to answer your question, I think, not to reinvent the wheel, Ateneo de Manila Press, actually, our alumni press and publications unit actually has a book on the Marcos technocrat. So it's a very required reading now. In fact, it's sold out. I think there's an ebook copy right now, as Glenda Gloria told me over Facebook as I was looking for a copy. That is a good history as to how, what the mixed results are over a technocracy. So technocracy, if you get subject matter experts, na say galing sa academe or galing sa privado, and they're there put in government, they're able to help yung best practices, ina-apply nila yung best practices dun sa pagpapatakbo ng gobyerno. So the more the merrier nga in that sense. But it all boils down to the leadership. So people want to give the new president a chance. Absolutely, as a citizen, we have to. There's a mandate. But also it means to have the experts that he appointed, and that a very good number of experts from the university down the road, diba? And at the end of the day, that's a great university and a source of technocrats. And sana na nga na, since pabayaan sila talaga na magbigay ng mungkahi, magpatakbo ng mga agencies nila para at least matuloy yung growth prospects ng Pilipinas, whether it be in the DOF or DPWH or NEDA mismo. If you have experts running those agencies and with a good enough mandate or leash from the president, then yun yung mangyayari dyan is we'll be able to get good best practices applied, especially if these technocrats are ethical. So that's the thing. You have to have good people, but as we know from the movement for good governance, of which I'm a part, yung criteria namin in terms of good Filipino leadership is unang-una effective, so technocrats are good at that. Pangalawa, empowering, which means that they are very inclusive in their approach. They work with people, mga sectors ng ekonomiya or ng lahat ng mamamayan, kinukonsulta nila. But the last part is ethical. That's always where we get tripped up. We have great people, but sometimes the ethical part is not addressed, so to speak. So
those three, that's good governance, and technocracy is implied there, which is in the effective governance.
Yes.
That's not enough. Kailangan
yes. You want servant leaders. So thankfully, we have schools like the UP NCPAG and the La Salle School of Governance. I think it's the Jesse Robredo Institute for Governance, thankfully. And then also the Ateneo School of Government. So we have, institutions naman that help make sure that we have good public sector leaders. Like, for example, one of our an alumnus of ours, recent alumnus who was a product of the mentorship of the Ateneo School of Government is now the mayor of Pasig, where I'm from. And you can see, iba talaga yung nivel or yung antas ng paninilbi niya sa gobyerno at sa tao. Pasig is very happy. He got re-elected with a landslide. It is possible. So that's the kind of public servant leaders and technocrats that you want in government. So thankfully, I know it's arguably a mixed curation of cabinet that presumptive president or incumbent president Marcos is doing. But at least on the economic side, we can see that instead of just unity, it's continuity. So the continuity from previous.
I'm trying my best to control myself.
Yeah.
So, going back to your story, you were a poli-sci major. You wanted to be a politician, I suppose. You wanted to go into politics, but then you wanted to become a technocrat. Did you have to retool? Did you have to get higher training, more training?
Yes, thank you for that question. In fact, as I've mentioned in other interviews and in journals when I've had a privilege to be interviewed, is that I had a learning disability that even plagued me until my university years at Ateneo. So it was not the best student in Ateneo, as Father Nemi and everybody else will tell you. But
Hi, Father Nemi.
Hi, Father Nemi. Thank
Here.
you for bearing with me. But yung nangyari sa akin is I realized the value of that education to retool, to pivot, ika nga, especially with the experience I had when you work for a good senator who was handling most of the reform legislation, or a good administration like the FDR administration, or a technocrat himself in like when Maro was handling economic legislation, you realize yung skill set mo ay medyo kulang na kulang. So I had to unlearn a lot of things. I had to develop new habits. So I went to school again. So I went to another Jesuit university. I went to Georgetown for my MBA. And then from then on, I identified where skills I needed to improve on. So I went to two public schools naman in the UK. So I went to Oxbridge, guys. So those two schools were glad enough to accept me because I was able to improve my grades over time. But the goal there for me was, if you want to help, you have to equip yourself. And so again, awan ng Diyos at naswertan ako na nakapasok sa mga universidad na yun. And I was able to retool my skills and then apply it in a sector that I felt I could make a difference, which is the energy sector.
Tell me about your experience in Georgetown. I have not been to Georgetown, but tell me about that. How did it form you as a technocrat?
Yeah, thank you. I'm not a technocrat. I'm trying to be one. So that's the caveat there, the colatilia. But Georgetown, the way I describe Georgetown, it's Ateneo with better architecture. That's all I will say. So everything from the Jesuits who hold beautiful masses, your philo and theo and liberal arts education, the humanities. Every year when they welcome the students there, you have posters of everything from Ad Maiorem Dei Gloriam, Cura Personalis, Men and Women for Others, Contemplation and Action. Those values are there. They're very much a part of the core curriculum. So parang Ateneo siya na we have a core curriculum and the focus is all on service. And that's like the mother's milk of Jesuit education, because that's the first Jesuit education in the modern world, so to speak, diba? And it stands, we always talk about coming down from the hill. Georgetown was literally on a hilltop. So when you say we come down from the hill, from Georgetown's perspective, you come down from the hilltop. So same mentality. So having said that, the humanities, the service for others, applied knowledge, it's so parang palpable na parang mararamdaman mo talaga. In fact, Gaston Hall, which is the main auditorium of Georgetown, beautiful Gothic-looking auditorium. The inscription there is Ad Maiorem Dei Gloriam, but you forget, as a Latin professor, there's another half that we don't have here in Ateneo, which is Inque Hominum Salutem, which is for the benefit or salvation or the health of mankind, diba? So that service part is always there. And since Georgetown is Catholic, but the US tends to be very secular, you have a lot of different faiths. We have Muslim classmates, we have atheists, we have LGBT on campus, but the fact is, it's all about going beyond yourself, serving, recognizing the other, helping the other. And I think that reinforced my education. And more importantly, apart from business, which I took an MBA there because it was the wider university. We were able to go to take classes in medical school, go to, take more philosophy courses. I went through a poetry fellowship, was part of the rowing team. So other value there called, mens sana in corpore sano, the healthy mind, healthy body. Those were reinforced to me when I was there. So I was able to unlearn and relearn everything. And thankfully, after that, I was able to apply it at work. And then more importantly, go for further studies so I could improve yung approach ko for development.
I'll ask you a question. So how did Georgetown, or how did you finally form this notion of development, which you're doing now, which you're trying to implement now in?
Yeah, it's so funny because the main thing that they accuse um, educate the university educated people of being masyadong elitista, whatever. I'll take pride in that because it's all back to basics. Eh? So and by back to basics, even using an old language like Latin has a very very fundamental nucleus to it. So let's say, for example, sabihin natin like even the words like, for example, cura personal or cura personalis, care for the whole person, right? Or educare, which is education, which is to call out. Those two, they drill it in your head to the point that you don't forget about it and you embrace it. So it's the same thing. So my approach to development is very liberal in the sense that, or very libertarian, in fact, if you think about it. It's how to empower the individual. Sa mga pagpapatayo ng sildaklatan, that is, for me, not a mandate. It's by law, you have to put up a library. But to be able to let somebody find out for themselves without being red tagged what kind of books they can read, let them discover their identity and find themselves in the written word, that's individual empowerment. Because that's what happened to me. I overcame my learning disability because of books. And because nobody told me what books to read, I found out for myself. So in that sense, that Latin phrase is so important to me that it was the foundation of my approach to empowerment, which is my philosophy now to help. And you look at even Washington, D.C. itself, which is like the mother's milk of politics, for better or worse. At that time, you had a transition between, Clinton, Bush, and Democratic Congress versus, or Republican Congress versus Democratic President, vice versa. So there's always a competition of ideas. And what's important to note in the competition of ideas, it's not you're wrong, I'm right. Similar to what's happening now na medyo toxic talaga yung discourse. There are some good elements in any administration or any political party na pwede niyong hiramin. In fact, they were saying Clinton's very powerful economic program that helped him get reelected was taken from the Republicans. He just made it nicer, sexier, more humane. So at the end of the day, you try to borrow the ideas from different. In that sense, yung approach niya at that time was, should there be a greater role for the private sector? Diba? Kasi the private sector can do things more efficiently. It can have more resources to attack a problem. How should the state behave? The state should obviously set the standard and the goals and to represent the individual, especially the most marginalized. Those are not binary ideas, hindi ba? Hindi naman sila magkalaban, magkatugma sila. So if you're able to combine that, you're now able to say, okay, if that works for me mentally and I can reconcile that in my head, right? Or, as the Latin phrase mentis vita, the life of the mind, then you go to the other phrase, again, it's all Latin, so sorry it sounds elitist, but that's really what it's drilled in there. So mentis vita pro vita mundi is one of the favorite Georgetown saying, very Georgetown, very Jesuit, which is the life of the mind.
What's that? In mentis?
Mentis vita pro vita mundi, which is the life of the mind for the life of the world, right? So you're in school not to do school bukol or to do varsity. You can do all that stuff. But it's just how to form your own personal approach to solving a problem that you feel is out there, na nangingibabaw, na parang nangungulit sa'yo sa gabi. I mean, parang hindi ka mapalagay. That's to use a Roque Furrios term, di ba? So the idea there is, how do you use your education to solve a problem that's personal to you? And in my case, it was a learning disability and the lack of information. And so that's why we have libraries. So that approach is very personal, but it's also because you're able to let competing ideas come together and make it work. And I hope that that's what an education will do for our fellow Filipinos. Either kung sa public school ka or kaya sa pupunta ka sa UP, LaSalle, San Beda, whatever, that it's a very liberating education. Like as again, go back to Latin, educare, to call out your best self. So yun, so this sounds like a philo oral exam, but really that's what it is. You ask the question, how do you approach development, and it's how do you approach your self-empowerment muna, and then how to lead by example, because you can believe in your experience and say, how can other people from different backgrounds who may not be as fortunate as you have the same opportunity to become the best of themselves?
Yun, that you thought that would be a library kasi In fact, it's a law, di ba? There's a law for building public libraries.
Yes, in fact, it's so funny because 1994 was when I started working with government, and that's when it got passed under President Ramos, and I think Senator Rocco was one of the authors. Pero hindi ko siya naabutan when I joined him. But it came full circle when I was doing the research nga about how to build more libraries, and nakalagay doon, well, the Philippines is one of the few countries around the world na isang batas na pala yun, yung mandatong magpapatayo ka dapat ng silid-aklatan from the congressional to the municipal to down to the barangay. So so why not make it work, di ba? So yun yung kasi ba. And secondly, if you look at the statistics nga, education statistics, for every 10 na pumasok bawat 10 Pilipino na pumapasok sa elementary school, yung nakakalabas lang ng kolehiyo is 1. So there's this big invisible gap between the people who actually got into school and the people who didn't make it out of school. And that gap is the out-of-school youth. So if you were to do more scholarships, that's great. If you were to improve public high schools, classrooms, maganda yan, malaki yung backlog. But what about the people who cannot get back into school? Yung maganda sa library or sa silid-aklatan or sa community reading centers, it's open to the public. Yung tinatawag na third space. People can go there whether or not you're Catholic, Protestant, Muslim, atheist, LGBT, straight, heterosexual, whatever, it doesn't matter. You're there to improve yourself.
Yes.
That's what I like about the library. It's a very democratic institution. And doon ako talaga lumaki. Kasi I was a working student doon sa Georgetown, and then when I was in Oxbridge, in both schools, the pound to peso was around 70 to 80 pesos a pound, diba? So nandun lang ako sa library mismo. I would go out to the kebab station, buy my food for the day, and then make it bow sa library and then eat it after. And that was my life for 3 months, and that saved my life and money also. So that helped me become a better person. I used that knowledge for good, and people should have that opportunity to improve themselves.
And how many libraries have you built? Not, I think
we have an entire partnership of around 20 NGOs and organizations who have helped build over 1,100 libraries now. But like I said, it could range from donating to a small library that's already there, or rebuilding a library that was torn down during the Abu Sayyaf encounters in Patikul, or creating a treehouse library dun sa Palo Leyte, or helping put up a library dun sa Bilibid National Prison. So by working with local partners, we're able to build over 1,000, and we have expanded na dun sa Bhutan, where we have 70 in partnership with the Ministry of Education. And then we have we have one in Tamil Nadu, India. We have one in Cambodia. So at least lumalago na siya, and that we're exporting the Bayanihan spirit in those areas. So that gives me a lot of hope na kung saan may naipapatayo kaming silid-aklatan, mas umaangat ang nivel ng buhay or ginhawa ng buhay ng mga tao.
All right, we have a question in our chat box.
Okay.
I don't know if you can see it. I'll read it to you.
Okay,
it's from
sure.
Hansi Juliano, who used to teach Pol Sci.
Okay.
He's now in Japan doing a PhD. Good evening to our show host and our guests. Hoping to ask or to clarify if I missed it. While we want to maintain balance and collective listening to multiple sides of the audience, are we not falling into what Popper called the tolerance paradox? Or to what extent in your research? I guess that's a tolerance for the illiberal ideas. So to what extent will you listen to the other side? Parang yun ang tinatanong niya.
Oh, you have to, diba? That's the only way. I can only speak for myself. I cannot speak for other people, right? The only reason I've formed my opinions over time is because I've been able to change my opinions, and you'll be surprised that For me, I have friends from all persuasions. I have friends who are very conservative, arch conservative, very, very much, very rigorous. And then I have friends who are more liberal. And it's those discussions that we have, yung diskurso nga, di ba? That the debate discourse. Out of that will come some synthesis, di ba? It's very Hegelian, so to speak. So at the end of the day, this dialectical thing, I'm going to tell you one thing on the day, we're going to agree to disagree. And that's it. And as opposed to what people think some people are, I have more friends. I have just as many friends from the unit team that I do that are Pinklawan. And there is some commonality there in terms of what they want to do for the country that we want to work with. Diba? So, yun. I'll give you an example, ha? Yung nakapagtayo kami ng silinaklatan for VP Lenny when she was still a congresswoman, and she was the one who took over the seat of Senator Rocco when she was in Congress. So we helped her with around 9 libraries in Camsur. But in fact, 3 months before that, we were able to help then Governor Aimee, with her libraries in Ilocos, in Lawag, and working with the Ablans, who we helped them build children's libraries and a museum library. So the idea that you have to work with different people is given to me. Diba? It's the synthesis of ideas is only possible if you're open, as you said, the paradox of tolerance, if you have to work with different people. And I'll give you an example, he's very centrist. See, Dr. Lavinia, Dean Tony Lavinia, formerly from the School of Government, he wrote a scathing article in Manila Standard, and I agree with that article, that a lot of the soft voters who could have gone to VP Lenny, although this is crying over spilled milk already, but a lot of people who could have gone to that were turned off by the rabid kakamping wave. So there is a point to that. Maybe not entirely true because there's a lot of disinformation also, but the fact that, yes, if you're in your echo chamber, walang mangyayari sa'yo. In the same way that if the new administration just listens to one side of the loyalist side or the apologist side or the straight up people who want to revive a Marcos administration from what it was in their golden age, so to speak, then you're going to have not unity, but as Senator Rocco said, you're not going to have unity. You're going to have the unanimity of the grave, which is not what you want to do, which is where the other echo chamber comes in, and which is where you're on a slippery slope to Gehenna or wherever you want it to be.
Yeah, I guess the battle is important, not just this openness, but the continued discourse, the debate, and of course, if you're not willing to listen to the other side, then is that going to be a what I heard a while ago was that the technocrat can be a check and balance also to the leader, because the technocrat decides not based on politics alone.
Yes, there's a book that I would recommend. Required. It was the first book that my professor in Cambridge, Dr. Amrita Narlikar, wonderful, brilliant professor, was. You have to read this book by Dr. Roger Pilke, which is called The Honest Broker, Oxford University Press. It's only around 100 pages, so it's an easy read. And the goal of The Honest Broker, which we have to have in the Philippines more of, is a technocrat wherein he will take different sides, they will present different sides objectively, and they will tell you what the trade-offs are. Meaning to say, for example, if you were an advisor to President Marcos, for example, you say, sir, I think you can lower the price of rice to 20 pesos. There is a way to do it, but sir, ito yung kapalit niyan. You can get it done, but what will happen is we'll probably have to take on so much debt. And it's up to you, because you are the president, you have the mandate to serve, but as your cabinet secretary, let's say it's the Department of Agriculture secretary or the NEDA secretary, they would say, but there's a cost to that. The unintended consequence of choosing something as populist as that, which is good, could be in the form of higher debt, and maybe Moody's, Standard & Poor, will come to you and say, well, we might have a problem with your tax collection because now you have to pay off the debt. So there's a saying that Albert Maysles or Russell Brand, I don't know who said it. He said something, tyranny is the elimination of nuance. You have to have a nuanced approach to it, which is what Mr. Julian was alluding to, which is how do you get all these sides together without that? Now, I will also say, since you asked Dr. Miroy, that you have to have the discourse based on facts. It's like, it cannot be all relative. It cannot be, whether lang. You have to have, like, for example, I have friends who were from the Duterte administration, and I'm seeing one of them on Wednesday. And the point is, we can talk to each other because for as long as it's based on fact, then everything can work together. But if it's all about untruth or fake news or twisted facts, how will you move together? Facts are supposed to, ika nga ni Ben Shapiro, who again, I listen to Ruth Ginsburg as much as I listen to Ben Shapiro, who were both on opposite ends of the spectrum. And he said, facts don't care about your feelings. It's true. So let's say with the new administration, with the Marcos administration too, that they're able to increase GDP and at the same time lower the inequality of the of the Gini coefficient. Let's say they're able to do that. If they're able to do that with a program, then credit to them, diba? We're supposed to support that because that's a fact. If they don't, then there's a fact also to deal with. And if you can work on that, then you can learn and move together. And that's the most we can ask for.
Yeah. Now you mentioned a while ago Marcus Aurelius, because we're talking about what can change, and you've been doing this, and I guess you're going to continue doing your advocacies, your development model within the context of we can't get what we have all the time, what we want all the time, right? So what you need to do will be able to work with with the cards that you're dealt with. So you decided on that already, right? That you're going to go on with your development work regardless.
Yes.
Okay? Is that related to Marcus Aurelius? Or?
Yes. I mean, I don't know if he's the one who said it, but the Stoics said it. But like that. What was you correct my Latin again? I remember. It's easier to remember the Latin because it's so few words lang, but they mean so many things. That's why I remember I was in your class. One of the things I remember was one of the things you taught us: non multa sed multum, right? Not many, but much. So there are only a few. If you feel as a kakampink na, oh God, we're Chicken Little, the sky is falling, we're dead. Yeah, you are what you perceive it to be. But if you feel that there's a way to do constructive engagement without sacrificing facts in a new administration, whether it be Marcos now, or Sara Duterte later on, or Vico Soto later on, or Sandro Marcos, I don't know who or Erwin Tulfo, or Robin Padilla, we don't know. What I do know is that there are always opportunities to serve. As another philosopher said, and maybe Marcus Aurelius also, elections are but a cup in the stream of public opinion. So now the elections are over. What are you going to do with the public opinion? Are we just going to rant on Facebook? We have to engage and do the work. The work has to happen regardless. So, hindi
pala Marcos, dapat pala Marcus.
Well, it's a good model to have, just as Machiavelli is an interesting model to have. Is that, Marcus Aurelius was not just a philosopher, he was an emperor, diba?
He was an emperor.
He wasn't a monk on the hill just proselytizing and pontificating. He was on the front lines battling barbarians at the gate, literally, and trying to create and save order in Rome, which was not perfect, but he tried to mold it in his, yung tinatawag nating agency, diba? The agency of being able to do something within your own space. Like what Viktor Frankl is saying, diba? Like, you could take anything away from a person except the power to choose, diba? To find your own way. So there is a way, however small.
That's so funny because Viktor Frankl is what formed our generation, which eventually led to the 1986 revolution. Yeah. Anyway, having said that, this notion of privatization, as the field of engagement, is that from a developmental point of view the healthiest that we have now? In other words, shouldn't we actually be engaged in the public sector as well, or is that a kind of an interim solution that we have, that we can engage in the private field for now?
No, thanks, Dr. Miro. I think sa akin naman kasi it's not binary, diba? It's that's why even with the previous administration, with the Aquino administration, to his credit, the public-private partnership thing was there. It's not just parang hindi lang siya slogan, because you really had the private sector doing its role, which is, can I build a bridge better than if I borrowed from Chinese money and got Chinese contractors to do it, tapos lalaki yung utang natin? can the private sector do it and just add tolling fees? Like let's say Skyway, diba? Nadaanan ko yung Skyway kahapon. That's the you think about it that way. But who regulates the tolls to make sure na hindi siya abusado sa motorista? And that's the government. How do you make sure that the road is built so it doesn't benefit one private developer, or it can reach more people so the factories, the farms, and the bedroom communities can connect and improve the economy? That's what the government should do well. So I've seen good people in any government, whether it be the Duterte government or even the Marcos administration, to the Pinoy administration, to GMAs, to even now with Marcos, with the second Marcos administration, that there are technocrats coming in and saying, okay, nanilbi na ako sa private sector, kumita na rin ako doon, di ba? And now I can serve without being tempted to make money because I've made money. And I think that's the balance, Dr. Miroy, is that you work in the public sector when you don't need the money. You work in the public sector when you have the experience from the private sector para ma-apply natin to, yung tinatawag nating best practices dun sa public sector, sa paninilbi sa gobyerno.
Now, how would you talk to our students who are devastated by the results of the? What will you tell them at this point? Other than well, you got to move on. What I don't know.
No, I know it's hard. I mean, and as somebody who's lived through different administrations, also, you have to wake up and smell the coffee first of all, diba? The reality, it's as one of my history professors told me, it's never what if, because what if there wasn't any cheating? What if? No, it's not what if, it's what is. You have to work from what is. And the sooner you realize and obviously there are many stages of grief, diba? Let's go through that grief period. Nobody's trying to shortcut it for you. But that's not going to happen in a vacuum. In the meantime, a government is being formed. People are still suffering. The poverty rate still is double digit. The Gini coefficient is still very lopsided in favor of, haves and the haves and not the have-nots. So can we work together constructively and find your niche to do it, diba? Like in our case, for example, yung sa kumpanya namin is like, we'll work in areas where the local government is strong at maganda yung incentives na binibigay ng gobyerno. So we're in Palawan, and that's not by accident because Palawan's beautiful or Palawan is the last frontier. Palawan and Puerto Princesa has one of the best local incentive for tax incentives for investors. So doon kami napadpad. But also because the growth of Palawan is an area wherein most people are migrating to because it's beautiful, the tourism is going up. So in our company, we go there because it's welcome. So yung sa akin is you can pick your spots. It's not all doom and gloom. There are spots you can pick on, even if you want to put the current administration or the incoming administration through a purity test. And I think that was one of the problems with some of us Jesuit educated or very woke people. I mean, although we're Gen X, so we're not that woke. So you worry about the woke people because there's what I know and I myself have been subjected to, which is a purity test. Ay, kasi may bahid na yan. They talk about other people, and so wag na nating sundan to. But that's not the way it's done, right? It's you even. I was talking about my friend the other day about Saint Augustine, and I went to San Agustin for high school. Then he say every saint has a past, and every saint has a past, every sinner has a future, or whatever. But the idea that there is a chance to work where you can, because the ultimate goal is to help the Filipino who does not have the opportunities that you did. That is really it.
Right. So there's another question. I think this is from Father Nono. Will you insist on justice if you work with the BBM government? For example.
I've had conversations about that. First of all, if I do work, absolutely yes. In fact, that's on the new cabinet secretaries to make sure that, let's say, for example, may tax compliance issue, kailangan talaga lahat magbayad ng buwis, di ba? So absolutely, that's. I think for Father Nono, thank you for that question. I think it's essential you don't compromise for that because you're there to give advice. You're there to be ika nga, what I said earlier, what Dr. Narlikar told me, you have to be an honest broker. You have to be there. First of all, I don't need this job. That's not me. I'm talking about other people who come in. Is that you say, I don't need this job. I came in from the private sector. I made money and I can feed my family. I'm here to serve, which means I can give you, the president, advice as to what is right and what is wrong. And I don't need the job. So I think the people who are appointed like that, they should be able to give good advice. If I was appointed, and I'm happy with the private sector, but if I was appointed to a certain administration, whether it be Aquino administration, Soto administration, Tulfo administration, Padilla administration, Duterte administration part 2, it's the same. I will serve, but I will need to have the license to tell the truth and to apply my ethics. Otherwise, ba't pa ako pumunta sa gobyerno? Mayaman na ako eh.
Is that what is called the critical collaboration that other known as?
Yeah, critical collaboration, constructive engagement. At the end of the day, it's public service based on facts. I think that's the way I would look at it. Diba? Kasi pwede mong, maraming pasikot-sikot yan. But at the end of the day, if you feel that you can, I'll give you an example. Not to be predictive, but the last Marcos administration obviously had problems with corruption and the rest is history. But the one technocrat that Senator Rocco, before he passed away, told me is there's a role model that you may not know of because not everybody captures him very well in terms of the history books. In that, the name of the gentleman is Rafael Salas, Paing Salas, ultimate technocrat, Harvard graduate, UP Law graduate, was from Negros, grew up from poverty into the heights of technocracy, and he was the executive secretary under Marcos. He was a technocrat and he was upstanding. This is the first half of the first Marcos administration, 1965 to 1970. The first half. So because of him, we had a green revolution. Because of him, we had rural electrification. He got technocrats like Bobby De Ocampo, Gregorio Villar, Joe Almonte, put them all together into a team. It was like an A team, and they fixed problems under the Marcos administration. But when corruption did not suit him, he left. And then the UN picked him up. And then he basically grew the UN population agency into what it is today, which is the largest entity in the UN. So a guy like that was able to walk away. So it's easy for me to say because I'm not in government. But I would say, as one of my mentors used to say, is that never lose your walkaway power. Or the way he used to say it is, you never lose your FU power. And that means that I will serve, I will apply the best of my knowledge, and I really thank you, Mr. President, Madam Vice President, Mr. Executive Secretary, Madam Vice President, Mr. President, for appointing me. But di ba? May tungkulin ako dito, and this is to serve the best ability based on facts. And if that changes, wala na ako dito. I'll go back to the private sector. But you have to have that, di ba?
Yes. So, is there anything else that you'd like to do despite the fact that your candidate didn't win in the last 2 minutes of our show, of our talk?
Yeah, first of all, many of the candidates I supported won, which is good, right? And the important thing talaga for us is to be able to serve, and as Bruce Lee said, be like water. Find that avenue to serve. There are many. Public service does not need public office. There are local governments. If you really want to subject the national government and Congress to your purity test, your woke purity test, go ahead. But please find an avenue to serve and not make an excuse to boycott everything because the country needs you. 2% of the country, as in 20% of the country controls 80% of the resources. 2% controls the 20%. That is the Pareto optimal rule of oligarch economies, and we are in it. And chances are, because you went to Ateneo, or many of us went to Ateneo, we're part of that 2 to 20%. So find a way to make that influence happen, because that's the reason why our candidate didn't win.
It's 18 hours.
Stuck to the 20%. So let's reach out to people. All the more it's reason to fight if you believe that you have a cause to fight for, and let's find it. It could be libraries, it could be building with more scholarships, helping fishermen, farmers, or what Angat Boy is trying to do. Let's channel that into something good, and I appreciate the opportunity to share that.
All right. So, Quintin, that was a mouthful. I hope that I think if Father Nono is engaging us, he must be spurred and inspired by it all.
Yeah, I hope I didn't turn everybody off, but you asked. Those are my honest opinion based on my experience, and it's not the absolute truth, but I'm hoping it can serve as an example of a constructive way of going forward without losing your spine or your integrity.
Yes. So constructive engagement, and also I guess constructive analysis. Look at the good that is still there. All right.
Yeah, without sacrificing the facts. Yeah.
All right. So Quintin, thank you very much. A pleasure and a joy, and always deep as usual. So thank you.
Yeah, Dr. Miroy, if I could just end with as with one of your Latin phrases, and that we'll go back to this interview if it's on Zoom and YouTube, is part of the pronunciation. Forsan et haec olim nemines juebit. One day we will look upon these times and really smile. So I really trust that the hope is a long game, and let's walk towards this hope by doing our share, however limited it is. Yun lang po.
Yes, with that, we'll end this episode of Lundagin Mo, Beybeh. All right, see you next time.
Thanks, Dr. Roy. Thank you to our audience. Maraming salamat po. Bye-bye.
Meron? Ano nga ba ang meron? Paano nga bang mabuhay ng tapat sa meron? Don't you wish you can relive your philo classes? The terror teachers? The terrible oral exams? Or the even terrifying but liberating and life-changing aha moments? Lundagin mo, Beybeh! Here's your chance! Lundagin mo, Beybeh! Kasama ang mga pilosopong sina Jovi Miroy at Ron Capinding. Lundagin mo, Beybeh! Leaping upward, leaping forward. Lundagin mo, Beybeh! Leaping to greater heights, to greater wisdom, to greater magis. Lundag na, Ateneo! Radyo-katipunan. News, insights, inspiration. Radyo-katipunan. Down from the hill and down to the world. Radyo-katipunan. The voice of the Blue Eagle.
Radyo, 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 katipunan, radyo, katipunan, radyo, katipunan, radyo, 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 katipunan, radyo, radyo, katipunan. Voice of the Blue Eagle, kami di mapipigil sa pagbabalitang tumpak at tama. Buhay atenista, sa loob sa labas ng eskwela, ating ibibida lahat ng kwela. Radyo, 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 katipunan. Radyo, 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 katipunan. Radyo, katipunan. Radyo, katipunan. Kawal ni Ignacio, katipunero.